Welcome back to Four Eyes, the podcast series that gives you a clear view into the optometry world across Canada and the US. We are your hosts. I'm Dr. Amrit Bilku.
I'm Dr. Deepan Kaur.
Hi, I'm Dr. Ravinder Randhawa.
And I'm Dr. Alex Kuhn.
So before we start our interview with Dr. Mothersbaugh, we want to just go over some stuff that's been happening in the optometry world, like the Bausch & Lomb infused daily contact lenses got FDA approval, and these contact lenses are hopefully going to be out by the end of 2020. So the Bausch & Lomb infused daily SiHy lens is going to be a next generation contact lens material called Califilicon A. So it's basically designed to meet the needs of contact lens wearers, especially the ones that have dryness. And Bausch & Lomb is also stating that these contact lenses are going to have outstanding breathability for healthy lens wear and high definition optics. And so...
Wait, so the DK value is 510? Is that what?
No. That's a 510 clearance.
Oh, I was like...
It's like, is the lens even there?
I know, it's like someone constantly breathing oxygen into this.
It's like an oxygen chamber contact lens.
This is so exciting. It's like when the SiHy came out, everyone was so excited. So now it's a new material that's coming out. So it's going to be interesting to see what this material holds in the future.
I want to know the details. Like, what's the DK value? What's the DKT value?
I haven't really found any other information. I tried to search the contact lens, and honestly, it's a lot of just this like FDA approval type of article so far. I haven't found any DK values or any other information, but what I'm assuming right now, if it got approval by the FDA, I'm assuming it's only going to be available in the US by the end of 2020. I don't know if Bausch & Lomb is going to launch this in Canada anytime soon, or if we're going to have to wait a little bit longer, because Health Canada hasn't reported anything.
I just tried to Google this material, Califilicon A, and all the information is vague AF. So I'm like, okay, but I don't know. Maybe
so
there's
still no DK
yeah,
value.
there's no, maybe more details will come out.
Well, I mean, to be honest, like, do you really expect any contact lens company to create a new daily lens and have it be a shit DK value?
But that's why I was like,
I would kind of be like, why?
If this DK value was actually 510, I'd be like, oh, this is my new go-to lens. Like, you guys will not feel any dryness. You won't even feel your own eyeballs at this point.
But I mean, I'm assuming like it's gonna have to be a higher DK value than current lenses.
What's the highest DK value? Like something 140, 50 or something like that, right? So what if it's just like 152? This is the new like DK value of this.
Hey, it's higher, right?
But then I feel like if they go even higher, it's going to be like a very thin lens.
Yeah, super flimsy.
You know how even like Daily's Total 1, a lot of people, even though it's like the most breathable, a lot of people have a hard time getting it in and getting it out. And it's so slippery.
That's the thing. That's why Deepan's like, you're not even going to feel it. You're not going to feel your eyeball. You're not going to feel anything. It's going to be like air. You just take a pocket of air and you just
no, it will be.
Stick it on your eye.
Oh my God. This is funny. Okay.
It's interesting that they talk about like a new optics. They say it's going to be improved optics of the contact
that would be
lens.
cool to know.
I think that's what catches my attention. Because then like we always like tell our patients like the vision with the glasses is not going to be the same with contact lenses.
So all we know is that there's this new lens coming out. The material is Califilicon A.
And the DK is probably 500.
Crossed fingers.
Don't quote us on that.
Fingers. And it's going to be out in the States at the end of 2020.
And then for offices that are reopening again, there's actually a really great website for, U.S. clinics that I found called reopeneyecare.com. This website basically is like your one-stop shop for all articles that are all over the web right now on how you can start to open up your practice again. And they have like marketing materials that you can download for free that basically tell your patients that your clinic is open. They have calculator tools for figuring out how much, cash flow you're going to get in a different scenario with reduced business. They have financing articles. They have articles for the rules and regulations, all that kind of stuff. So we'll leave that link for the website in our description so that you guys can take a look.
And then they also, one more important thing that they have is they talk about how to order supplies, PPE supplies.
Yes.
So I think that's a lot of people are running shortage on supplies too.
Yeah. Yeah, it just basically grabbed I feel like we kind of mentioned this like on our Instagram a while back. Like when COVID hit, there was just so much information being thrown at us. And it was just so overwhelming because every single media outlet or every single website and podcast was just giving so much information. Like you really didn't know what to do. And this one website kind of took all those articles from different websites and then put it in one place so that you can just search whatever you need to reopen your clinic on this website.
So I think the equivalent to that website in Canada is Eye Care Business Canada. It's not as organized as that website, but it still gives a lot of articles on how to reopen or how to manage your staff. And Eye Care Business Canada basically kind of helps practices in Canada understand how to reopen in terms of practices and business.
And just to clarify, the website is eyecarebusiness.ca. I want to give a shout out to all of our listeners for Four Eyes because I feel like we're still such a baby podcast. Like we've only honestly really been out for 3 months now. And we've seen our podcast really grow, and it's all because of you guys, like our listeners, our Four Eyes family, everyone that's supporting us. We're so grateful and thankful for that. And I just want to give a shout out to all of the international listeners that we have, because our podcast does focus on US and Canadian optometry, and we're still working on that alone, trying to do research and seeing how we can relate the two countries. And, as our podcast grows, hopefully we can start incorporating more international optometry. So shout out to our listeners in Morocco, Mexico, the UK, Australia, Germany, Estonia, Italy, Sweden, Jordan, Nigeria, South Africa, Philippines, France, Turkey, Qatar, India, and Bulgaria. You guys are awesome. Thank you so much for listening to Four Eyes and supporting us. We just wanted to make sure you guys know that you're recognized too, aside from all of our US and Canadian listeners. Today, we're talking with Dr. Eric Mothersbaugh, who is the Dean of Student Affairs at the Illinois College of Optometry. After graduating from ICO himself, Dr. Mothersbaugh pursued a career in academic optometry and has stayed with ICO since then. And we brought him on Four Eyes today to share his experience in academic optometry and to dive deeper into why he believes that human interaction is so important to have alongside eye care. Once again, this interview was recorded over Zoom, so apologies in advance for any audio lag or distorted sounds. We hope you guys learned something from this today and enjoy. Can you tell our listeners who might not know you just a little bit more about yourself in general?
Yeah, so my name's Eric Mothersbaugh. I'm an optometrist first and foremost. I graduated from Illinois College of Optometry in 2012. Since I got my OD degree from ICO, I've actually remained on campus for the entire first 8 years of my career. I did residency there right after graduation in primary care and ocular disease, and then got hired for a full-time faculty post after that. I did that for a little over 5 years, and then last fall, or fall before last, 2018, I got a promotion, made a switch over to administration. So my current role and title is Dean of Student Affairs, and that's primarily student services related stuff, admissions, recruiting being a big piece of it, but then also, of course, serving our students on campus in basically everything non-academic. I taught a course in optics, and now I do a whole bunch of admissions interviews every week. So I feel like I've kind of seen it from every possible angle, or almost every possible angle.
Oh yeah, we remember you as our optics teacher.
Yeah.
And ethics. Don't forget ethics. 8 a.m.
Yeah, and
7 a.m.
So I had to, when I got the promotion, I actually wrote a formal letter of resignation for my full-time faculty position. And then our dean, Stephanie Mesner, hired me about 20 minutes later for a part-time faculty position. So I've got, my student affairs role is my full-time job, but then I do an extra basically like 10 to 20% on top of that, which is enough to do one clinic session working with students in primary care.
Wow.
I do that once per week, and teaching ethics too is another part of that. So all that together keeps me plenty busy for sure.
Oh yeah, definitely.
So that kind of goes to our first question. So like you did a residency in ocular disease and like primary care. So how did the career in academia, like where did this come from? Like, did you know during optometry school that you were going to choose this career, or this just kind of as opportunities came up, you took it?
I guess a little bit of both. It was when I first came to optometry school, I certainly had no intention. Quite frankly, I hadn't really even thought through that was a way that it could be used. I mean, like, I certainly hadn't really considered that a career path for myself. I was kind of operating under the impression that I had been since I was in, middle school, high school age, first getting interested in the profession, was that I'm going to get my degree, I'm going to move to some sort of suburban area, hang up my shingle and do a small private practice sort of thing, either solo or with a small group of 2 or 3 people, kind of what I had in mind. And it was during my first like weekly clinical assignment was during my second year when I was seeing patients regularly for the first time. And just kind of based on sheer luck of the draw, I guess, I was paired with an attending that I ended up having a really good relationship with. And in working with them, it just kind of planted the idea in my head that like, wow, I feel like the attending docs actually have a pretty cool job. They essentially step into the exam for the fun parts of it. They're, managing high level, complex medical cases, and also getting to be a teacher at the same time, and just kind of be like surrounded by motivated young people all the time. And that was when I started to realize that maybe it could be for me. And it ended up all that paired with just some kind of lucky timing along the way of things being available when they are. And grateful to mentors along the way that have kind of helped coach me through the process.
Also, kind of going on top of that, what are some pros and cons of having this type of career, you would say?
Every once in a while, usually around this time of year, actually, is when fourth years and third years are thinking about residencies. Fourth years are either already matched with one and moving up. So I get questions like this somewhat regularly of like, how do I know if it's right for me, basically. And I think there's definitely pros and cons to being in academia, and it can really be exhausting if you're not into it. So anyone who is trying to make choices for reasons other than I'm passionate about teaching, it's going to be hard for the pros to balance that out if you don't truly have that kind of underlying drive to want to contribute to the profession in that way. Certainly things on the pro side, I mean, I already kind of rattled a couple of them off a minute ago, is being around motivated people all the time, and getting energy from teaching, and being valuing not just the doctor-patient relationship, but also that mentor-mentee relationship that comes in working with students directly. I think a huge pro is that it's a very layered thing, and there's a reward kind of feedback mechanism in addition to the standard doctor-patient one that every optometrist experiences. I think that's a huge rewarding thing. Another big pro for people with U.S. federal loans anyway, such as myself, is I'm enrolled in a pretty generous loan forgiveness program because I'm employed by ICO, and ICO is a qualified not-for-profit. I'm a little over 7 years now into a 10-year track to have my debt forgiven. So I'm on an income-based repayment plan. I'm still paying my loans every month. It's calculated based on income. And when I hit the 10-year mark, I'll be eligible to apply for forgiveness, whereas the kind of standard versions of those programs are somewhere between 20 and 30 years, depending on exactly which one you're in. So the starting salary for, and especially like a new entry level instructor, assistant professor in academia, is going to be lower than what someone could stand to make in the private sector or corporate sector of optometry. But when you extrapolate the, savings on loan forgiveness over that 10-year period, it's actually not that far off. Biggest con, I think, like what a lot of optometrists feel, is that work doesn't end when work ends. You're always on call in some capacity, whether it be actually like legit on call for patient care, or students sending texts and emails and stuff at all hours of the night. So a challenge for me early on was developing like clear, healthy boundaries for myself as far as at what level and at what times I'm going to engage with people. And what I learned along the way was being strict with myself about setting those boundaries. People respected them. It was just, if I didn't set a boundary, then nobody was going to respect that boundary that wasn't set. I guess another one is just like politics of large institutions.
Yeah.
If I was in solo practice, certainly, or in practice with just 2 or 3 other partners, there's not as much red tape to get through and not as many personalities to have to understand and kind of balance when difficult decisions are being made.
I feel like to be a faculty member, you need to be a family person, because you're working every day with a huge group of people that you see every single day during and even after work. So it's like a big family. You have cousins, you have your siblings, you have your parents, you have your little kids, and you just have to manage everyone like a big family. I feel that sense when you're working at a school. Everyone has such a different dynamic, and you have to be able to handle everyone just like a family reunion kind of a thing.
Yeah, I've definitely experienced a version of that. It's, I think the only piece that I would probably disagree with there is the piece about having kids. I try really hard to have it not be that way, because students in optometry school are adults, and that's, this is me, the ethics person, talking now, but one concept that I try really hard to avoid when I'm interacting with students is paternalism. This idea of, I've been there before, I've done it, you haven't, I know better than you, sit down, shut up, sort of like parenting, that can, I think, at the graduate level, be disruptive to education.
Yeah.
But aside from that piece, I'm definitely right there with you on having like a bunch of cousins and siblings.
Yes.
Yeah. And for better and for worse, right? Like, it's a lot of dynamics to keep in play, but it's also like some of my absolute best friends I have been working with for almost a decade now.
Yeah. Aside from being able to manage living with a family, what other qualifications or characteristics, interests would you need to have a successful career in academia?
Patience and passion, I think, is going to be enough to carry most people through it. You can tell when someone kind of doesn't want to be there. I've experienced as a student on rotations, and from a student's perspective, that I think that can be a demoralizing thing, to be taught by somebody who you get the sense that they're just really not into it, or they're having a tough day. Like, everybody has a tough day, but you know what I mean? Whatever the opposite of that is, I would say, is a characteristic, like somebody who truly wants to be there and not only feels that way, but takes measures to actively show people that they care as well. Like, I'm sure if you survey a whole bunch of faculty members, you're not going to get people saying like, "Oh no, I don't like my job," or I don't care about teaching. People wouldn't be in the profession if they wouldn't do it. But I think there's a difference between feeling it and actively showing it, reminding people that you're there because you care about them.
Very true. And I guess it was because you were from ICO anyways. I feel like, was it a very comfortable transition into becoming a faculty member of ICO from just graduating as a resident and former student?
Yes and no. There were pieces that definitely were comfortable and seamless, like just kind of not having to learn a bunch of HR systems and electronic health records and payroll stuff. I mean, certainly, like, not having to do any of that over again made the transition a little bit easier. Not having to move apartments made the transition a little easier. But there were some things that were difficult as well. One thing was, I think early on, I realized pretty quickly that I had to make sure that I was asking questions, because a lot of times folks that I was either, reporting to or working with, I think either thought I knew things that I didn't know yet, or maybe assumed that I had already learned something from somebody else, whether I had done that or not, based on who a previous supervisor was. So I had to make sure I was making a conscious effort to advocate for myself during the transition, to make sure that my questions got answered and that I knew what I was doing. Which for me, that can be a little hard sometimes. It took me well into my 20s before I learned how to ask for help regularly and in a healthy way. But I got better at that along the way. And the thing that I was probably most scared about in making the transition was, especially having been a student there, was, I developed close friendships with people that I went to school with, and now the dynamics were going to be changing, where possibly I was going to be grading them, or something to that effect too. And it turned out that was a lot of anxiety that was in my head, and everybody jumped on board pretty quickly, and it was never really that big of a deal. I didn't feel like I was ever disrespected by anybody, because we had been friends in a different capacity before.
Okay.
So to switch gears a little bit, can you tell us what a typical day looks like during the pandemic for you?
So everybody's remote, or I should say almost everybody's remote. On any given day, there is some activity on campus, but it's a skeleton crew. It's checking mail a couple times a week. It's facilities doing management of the physical plant. It's security staffing, and then we've done, I think, 2 or 3 days of patient care is all, and the residents are triaging over the phone. Certainly there's, emergency protocols in place for anybody that needs to actively be seen, but there's been a couple of days that the folks in the Eye Institute have actually scheduled patients for post-ops. And so there's been a couple of days like that. I personally have not been to campus since the 17th of March, I think was the last day that I was there. Maybe that, whatever that Thursday or Friday was around there. And I've been doing everything completely remote since then. I told you before, I've got part-time faculty status now. I actually opted out of doing participating in the online clinic learning, just because my plate's been full with other stuff. My biggest task has been converting admissions interviews and visits to remote. So it's weird to even call it a visit, because it isn't one. But we've interviewed over 40 people since we left, and been using platforms like this one, getting people all in a group call together, to introduce them to the team, get them to meet each other and everything, and then doing one-on-one interviews with faculty members after that. But that's been I've definitely had my hands full. I mean, my job is to try and, I'm not a salesperson, but my job is basically to sell ICO and get them to choose us over other schools.
Yeah.
And the idea of committing to 4 years and that kind of debt, sight unseen, is absolutely fascinating to me. So it's been pretty fun, I guess, to watch that all unfold.
Is that pretty challenging? Because I know personally, I made the decision to come to ICO after the tour of the school. So I feel like that's a big factor maybe in some prospective students' decisions, is they want to see the clinic, they want to see the dorm rooms, they want to see, the classroom size, the labs, they want to see all of those things. Is there any alternative that the students get to see during the online interviews, like pictures or videos?
Fortunately for us, our comms team has been pretty active over the last several years in putting together a good digital platform for us. So we've already got things that were recorded for virtual tours around campus and stuff like that. Certainly, when they were made, it was not with the intention that this would be the purpose they would serve as a replacement for it. But I think we do a pretty good job showing who we are to students with our website and social channels and stuff. But yeah, it's been, that's been the biggest challenge of it, is it's obviously such a, like, one of the things that we love doing the most is showing off our clinic, showing off our city. So I feel like the most inherent selling points of the institution are not as present as they have been.
Like in the shadows now.
Exactly. So that's been the challenge. I think that's why it's been kind of fun for me to try and replicate that. I will say though that definitely right there with you. It would be hard for me to make that decision without seeing it, and it was part of what kind of sealed the deal for me in deciding that I had the right place when it was time for me to decide to go to ICO. But that said, like this is happening equally to everybody across the board. So for the students, it's they still get a head-to-head comparison, I guess, as if they're interviewing multiple places. Maybe even how well a school is handling it ends up being a part of the factor in their decision too. So we'll see how it goes.
Do you have to say, I was really, when I like interviewed with ICO, watching the videos of the first year day in a life, that gave so much better perspective. And then I watched it again after first year. I was like, this is very accurate of like what happened, like the roller coaster of everything. And it was neat. I really like the day in the life.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. They did I'll say we did a reboot of that recently with a couple of students that are in their third year now. So we'll see if there ends up being a third edition. Yeah.
Yep. So you already did go over what your job looks like right now during the pandemic. How do you feel like your role as the Dean of Student Affairs will change once the pandemic is over?
My hope is that across the board, we all learn some valuable lessons from this. I think a lot of stuff's going to change at ICO. I think we've certainly now lived and breathed what telecommuting is and isn't like, and I think there's going to be some lasting changes there, depending on position, depending on rank, and all that, and exactly what job responsibilities are. But I haven't quite figured out how much of that will directly apply to student affairs or not. But that's one thing that my head's always on as a manager of a team of people now, is keeping in mind these kind of work-life balance sort of things that can be incentives to make employees good employees if leveraged properly. Specifically, my main number one job is being a student advocate. Like that's what I do for a living. So I don't think that much is going to directly change for me. I'm very anxious to get back onto campus as soon as possible. I love being there, but I think part of what we'll be doing on the kind of student support, student success side is helping people navigate with all the stuff that students navigate all the stuff that's come up for them and gone on during this time. Everybody's still in like survival mode right now, and I think once the dust does settle, things do start to go back to whatever normal is. I think there's probably going to be some emotional stuff to unpack for a lot of people, not just students, but that's primarily my work is with them. I feel like I'm not actually answering your question.
No, you are. This is like exactly what we wanted to know. You actually told us more than what we wanted to ask you, just because I feel like it's more interesting for us than possibly some of our listeners, because we are also from ICO. And it's just nice to hear how the school is handling everything, because it's a big school too. So there's just a lot of people that have been affected. And
I think, obviously nobody has a playbook for anything like this. Everybody's just doing the best they can. We've certainly been committed to sticking to the facts and following what the CDC is saying and following the mandates that are brought down by the federal government and our state government. And I think, having Dr. Collip at the helm of the whole institution, knowing that he's got a student affairs background, it's all very, students first mentality. And I've been, happy to be at a place that has that as its core philosophy, because that's who I am too.
In our mental health episode, you were mentioned quite a bit because you're a huge advocate for mental health awareness. Has the optometry school curriculum changed anyhow, or have any additional resources being implemented more into mental health awareness?
Yeah, thank you. That's, I think not just mental health, but the concept of student success in general has been a huge focus of ICO in the last couple of years. And quite frankly, I think it's a part of the reason that I was chosen for the job that I'm in, is because during that interview process, it's something I spoke very openly about, and had some ideas of things that I thought could be helpful to implement to make students more likely to be successful. It's a rigorous program. Probably better than anybody, having just recently finished it. We do a good job in, I think, letting people know how rigorous it's going to be. And we keep high standards throughout the admissions process, so that people who are getting accepted, we know based on kind of the statistics of it all, have a high likelihood of getting through successfully. But it's certainly much more complex than that. And I think it's always been that way, but I'm going to sound judgmental of previous generations in saying this, but I think I was raised to basically believe that if you work hard, you can do it. This sort of like pull yourself up by your bootstraps mentality, and I don't begrudge my parents for that, because I think that, grit, or whatever kind of terminology you want to use, I think it's a valuable trait. But I'm so grateful for your generation for helping us all move through that and actually be able to openly admit, accept, and discuss that there are barriers to success that are beyond just sheer brute force will, or like intellectual horsepower or something like that. Smart, hardworking, gritty people still struggle. And I think that's something that we've been really dedicated to understanding better and allocating resources to assist in. So in the last couple of years, we've launched a counseling program. We've ramped up our tutoring program to include not just like, hey, let's sit down one-on-one and go through biochemistry notes together, but actually having like a peer mentoring sort of dynamic in that too, that is called the academic coaching program, where it's like, it could range from like having an accountability buddy to make sure that you're, going to sleep when you want to, and eating and exercising and all that, all the way up to, hey, I don't feel comfortable, or I feel ashamed to go talk to Dr. So-and-so about this exam. Can you kind of help me navigate that sort of mentorship?
Another program that you kind of didn't mention, but I thought was really helpful at ICO, was the Big Brother, Big Sister program.
Yeah.
I felt like it kind of helped with the first years a lot, that they kind of talked to somebody who already went through it, and I think when they were anxious, they could just kind of message them, and it's because your fellow peers are kind of going through the same thing, but kind of having somebody to mentor, or somebody that's there to morally support you. I think that was a really good program as well that ICO offers.
Yeah, and that's, I think over time, one of my hopes is to better integrate that program with this academic coaching stuff, and also with some things that we've dabbled in and tried in the past, with having like faculty, small group advisors and mentors and stuff like that. I think there's an opportunity there to get all that stuff talking to each other a little bit more, so that rather than just like, here, this is your assigned person, I hope you like them, otherwise you're going to have to figure it out on your own. Having kind of laid out from the get-go that people have multiple different avenues to get the help that they need, knowing that each individual might navigate those waters a little bit differently, is a huge priority for me.
Yeah. So your bio on ICO's website mentions that you strive to teach human interactions alongside with eye care. Can you expand on what this means and how you implement this teaching to your students?
Sure. Sorry, I cut you off.
No, it's okay.
Yeah. So that it's funny. I had to actually like look myself up on ICO's website, because there used to be a whole like faculty page, and then when that changed, now it's just like a photo of me. But they did a video profile thing a few years ago when I was that was when I was probably like 2 or 3 years into my faculty role, and that piece about teaching human interaction along with patient care, I was probably 26 27 or 28 when I said that.
So it means nothing now.
No. I think it was cool to like rehear my past self talk about that, because I think that is at the core of who I see myself as an educator. And I think it's a big part of why I've made the move from faculty to administration and working in student affairs now. Where it came from at that time and kind of the core of my like teaching philosophy is really rooted in helping students understand the most complicated pieces of patient care. And I know that we've got a tough school, and I know that we've got faculty who, quite frankly, know their shit and teach it well. I don't worry for a minute about any of our graduates not having the tools that they need to diagnose and treat patients. It's all pretty flowcharty, honestly. I don't mean to just dismiss it and say that it's easy, because it's definitely not. But the piece that is much, much less easy to master is actually being able to take that knowledge and package it and put it in a way that you can educate the patient and help them truly understand what it is that's expected of them. Like glaucoma is the main example that comes to mind. Is how do I tell you about this chronic, potentially blinding condition that's going to require an action item from you every day, and how do I get that across in a way that doesn't abuse like fear mongering and is truly going to, inspire and get that action from the patient that they're going to need to do, while also boosting their confidence in me, and be someone that I can have a continuing relationship with for years and years, seeing them every 3-4 months for forever. And that piece of it, it's not just about the word choice, right? There's no script that you can memorize that's going to make that go seamlessly every time. It's about reading the room and, giving things in small bits and using stuff like the sandwiching technique. It's, that the art of doing all of that is so much more complicated than the actual like nuts and bolts science of patient care. So that's something that I try to put at the front of my teaching style. So Alex and I work together in the clinic, but one of the ways that I would try to implement that as an attending is, once the students get to a certain point and they've demonstrated that they clearly know how to do the things, it's okay. Well, now I want you to basically, treat this as your patient with me as your resource. And that includes the education at the end of it, where I'm going to sit back and listen in while you do your thing. And then we're going to break down your word choice and your tone and your body language and all that afterwards. And fast forward now several years into the future, that same thing applies not just to patient care, but also in helping students interact with faculty members and their peers that they might be having troubles with. It's a very, since so much of it is centered around communication, verbal and nonverbal, that same philosophy applies seamlessly to student affairs. So that's been something I've realized along the way, definitely.
Yeah. Having chairside manner when you're in clinic is a skill that not everybody can learn. Unfortunately, some people just have it and some people don't. But the people that have it and then are also good in their clinical skills are those exceptional doctors versus, everyone can learn the clinical skills and be a good enough doctor. But to have that interaction with every patient and at every age. So if you can get along with your 5-year-old and if you can get along with your 95-year-old, you're making an impact on these patients compared to someone who's just doing the clinical skills. And
totally.
Yeah.
I was just going to say, if you think about that from the patient's perspective too, they're never going to know whether you did a good job on the eye exam. They're going to assume that you did fine because that your diploma on the wall says that you're qualified to do it. But what they're going to remember is how they interacted with you, and that's what's going to determine whether they recommend you and whether they come back.
There was an article, I can't remember it now. I was listening to a Try Not to Blink podcast episode, and they were talking about ways to avoid getting sued, basically, from your patient. And I think it was right. And it was the number one reason why someone was sued was not because they did something wrong at the eye exam, but because the patient did not like the doctor. And you can kind of avoid like getting a lawsuit just from having a good relationship with your patient.
Actually,
Totally.
remember that podcast. I think they were talking about physicians in general as well.
Yes.
Not just optometrists. And they were talking about like just kind of like spending that extra couple or more minutes with your patients and just kind of explaining it a little bit better. It saved you from a lawsuit. Even if you misdiagnosed them, if the patient liked you, they're like, okay, like I like that doctor. They're less inclined to sue you. And I think that's great. Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, I certainly wouldn't mean to suggest that like, hey, if you're charming enough, everything's going to be totally fine. And you can be completely incompetent. But I do think, not just with patients, but with any human interaction, for me, it's with students and colleagues at work all the time. Like, I think everything would be a little bit easier if people just gave each other some trust and the benefit of the doubt more often. Times like this with all the uncertainty in the world going on with the pandemic and other things, I can feel that is harder to come by. I think when times get tough and the stressors are high, people like shield up and go into survival, protection mode. And it can be a difficult thing to break through, but at least demonstrating that forward to other people, I think it helps kind of in some subconscious nonverbal ways. It signals that, hey, this is a safe communication, and there's no reason not to feel comfortable opening up or let's actually get to the core of what the problem is that's going on.
Yeah.
So talking about like how you like to be an attending and everything, I do want to just say that I really enjoyed having you as an attending, because I felt like during that time, like you trusted me enough to be able to talk to the patient at that point. And then we talked about it later. So that, I think that even helped more with like confidence and stuff, rather than just hearing the attending talk and whatnot. And so I definitely valued that a lot, and definitely stuck with me like throughout the rest of ICO.
Yeah. I appreciate that. I mean, the only thing I'll reject is the way that the comment was directed, as if it was something that I did for you. I mean, I think that it's earned. The trust is a two-way street. Mm-hmm. Certainly not every student is ready for that. But I think one of the responsibilities of the educator is, knowing that at any given time you're working with a handful of students that might all, even though they're at the same academic level, they might be at different preparedness levels for that sort of engagement. And being able to have a close enough relationship with each of them to know, who's ready for what makes it pretty easy.
Well, I think that's pretty much most of the questions that we had. I mean, we learned a lot more than we were expecting to, which is really nice. And it was so nice to have a conversation with you again after so long. This is going to be really helpful for new grads and then students. So a career in academics is always focused on the salary. And it's really hard to look at any other part of an academic career when you're still a student and you have all those loans on your mind. So I think everything that you talked about today is going to be really helpful for someone to make their decision or to pursue an academic career in optometry, because there are so many benefits to it that you pretty much highlighted today. So thank you so much, Dr. Mothersbaugh.
Of course.
For coming on.
Yeah, thank you very much. I appreciate you inviting me to be on, and I really enjoyed just getting to see your faces and catch up for a while too. So see ya.
Bye.
Bye.